When you think about most empires, they rise, they fall, and they leave behind ruins. But there's one civilization that's different. It's endured, reinventing itself again and again for 4,000 years. So today, we're going to dive into the epic story of China, a grand history of dynasties, incredible inventions, and this absolutely unique capacity for resilience. And that really gets to the core question of this explainer, right? How on earth does a single civilization last this long? Well, there's no easy answer, but a huge part of it lies in this unique cycle of collapse and rebirth. And it's all powered by one core idea that has shaped China for millennia. Let's dig into what that is. Okay, so what is this big idea? It's the Mandate of Heaven. This came about way back in the Zhou dynasty, and it's basically the political operating system for all of Imperial China. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Heaven gives a ruler the right to rule, their legitimacy. But, and this is the important part, if that ruler becomes corrupt or incompetent, heaven can take that mandate away, and that usually happens through rebellion or a natural disaster. This concept justified both the rise and the fall of dynasties for centuries. All right, to really get a handle on this cycle, we have to go back, way back to the very beginning, to the foundations that were laid along China's great rivers. We've got to go way, way back. Long before any emperors, civilization here kicked off with farming. Over 10,000 years ago, early cultures figured out how to grow rice and millet in these super fertile river valleys. And that consistent food source, it created this, like a cultural center of gravity that would anchor the civilization through every single storm that was to come. What's really fascinating is that out of a period of total chaos, they call it the Warring States period, came the very ideas that would eventually hold China together. You have thinkers like Confucius, who gave them a blueprint for social order. Then you have Taoism, offering a kind of spiritual harmony with the natural world. And of course, Sun Tzu's Art of War became the legendary guide to strategy. These weren't just dusty old philosophies, they were the cultural glue for a future empire. So, with that philosophical bedrock in place, the great wheel of history turned toward unification, and that led to some of the most brilliant golden ages the world has ever seen. So who was the guy who pulled this all together? Meet Qin Shi Huang. In 221 BCE, he steamrolled all his rivals and declared himself the first emperor. Now, he was absolutely ruthless, but his vision was just monumental. He standardized everything you can think of: writing, money, even the width of roads. And he began connecting the fortifications that would one day become the Great Wall. He literally forged the imperial identity of China from scratch. Then comes the Han Dynasty, right? They built on what the Qin started and created China's first real golden age. They set up a professional civil service based on merit. A professional civil service based on merit. That's way ahead of its time. And crucially, they opened up the Silk Road, which connected China all the way to Rome. They exported incredible luxuries like silk and a revolutionary new technology, paper. Fast forward a few centuries, and that cycle hits another incredible peak. The Tang and Song dynasties took China to even greater heights. The Tang capital was, it was the place to be, the most cosmopolitan city on Earth, a buzzing hub of art and culture. But it was really the Song dynasty that saw this explosion of scientific progress that put China centuries, and I mean centuries, ahead of Europe. And this era, wow, it gave the world what we now call the four great inventions: gunpowder, paper, printing, and the compass. Just stop and think about that for a second. These technologies would go on to define the modern age, from warfare to exploration to the spread of knowledge. And here's the kicker. At this point, all of this tech was basically a Chinese secret. But, what goes up must come down. That's the whole idea of the Mandate of Heaven. After every great peak, there's a valley. Internal decay and powerful threats from the outside would bring China's imperial glory to a serious crisis point. And the first huge shockwave came from the north. In the 13th century, the Mongol armies of Genghis Khan and later his grandson Kublai Khan just swept across China. For the very first time, the Mandate of Heaven was claimed by foreign invaders who set up their own dynasty, the Yuan. This was a total game changer, absorbing China into the largest land empire in all of history. But the fall of the last empire, that was maybe even more traumatic. In the 19th century, the Qing dynasty faced a perfect storm. First, they were defeated in the Opium Wars against Britain, which led to these humiliating, unequal treaties.
Then, the Taiping Rebellion exploded from within, becoming one of the bloodiest civil wars in human history. By 1911, the mandate was well and truly lost, and a revolution just swept away 2,000 years of imperial rule, just like that.
So this collapse kicks off what many in China call the Century of Humiliation. But true to its historical cycle, this period of fragmentation would eventually, after a lot of pain and chaos, lead to a dramatic modern rebirth.
You might think the end of the empire would bring peace, right? Nope, not even close. Instead, China completely shattered. Warlords carved up the country for themselves, Japan launched a brutal invasion, and a long, bitter civil war raged between the nationalists and Mao Zedong's communists. Finally, in 1949, Mao's forces won, and the People's Republic of China was born.
This slide really shows the fork in the road for modern China, a clash between two completely different visions. On one hand, you have Mao Zedong, who tried to engineer society through pure ideology and mass campaigns. The result was mostly turmoil and famine. But his successor, Deng Xiaoping, he did a complete 180. He wasn't interested in ideology, he was interested in what worked.
And this famous quote from Deng, it just sums up his whole philosophy perfectly. He basically said, I don't care if a method is communist or capitalist, is it a black cat or a white cat, as long as it catches mice, as long as it gets results. And that pragmatism, it unleashed China's economic potential in a way the world had never seen before. And the results of Deng's reforms? Just look at this. It was an absolute explosion. After decades of going nowhere, China's economy didn't just grow, it went vertical. This incredible surge lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and created the world's manufacturing powerhouse, all within a single generation. We're talking about one of the fastest, most massive economic transformations ever.
So, fast forward to the 21st century, and that transformation is pretty much complete. China is now the world's second largest economy, and it started projecting its influence all over the globe. With things like the Belt and Road Initiative, this massive global infrastructure project, it's like they're building a 21st century version of the old Silk Road, completely reshaping global trade.
But of course, this incredible rise has created its own massive set of challenges. You've got a rapidly aging population, huge environmental pressures from all that growth, the struggle to balance growth with inequality, and, of course, rising tensions with the West. These are the modern-day tests of China's age-old resilience.
And all of this brings us right back to where we started. China has always been a civilization of cycles, of dramatic collapse and spectacular rebirth. After 4,000 years, it has risen yet again to become a central player on the world stage. The only question now is, what does the next turn of this ancient wheel look like?